Welcome to the Real World. My name is Cameron. Thank you so much for joining us on episode 77 of the Real World podcast. We're talking all about the new Netflix film Lift and our favorite heist movies of all time. Thank you so much for joining us here on the channel. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos. We're all about movies here. We're huge movie fanatics. We review my physical media collection you can see behind me. We review all the new movies on streaming and in theaters, as well as our favorite classic films. So let's kick things off, as we usually do, with movie news. Selena Gomez has been cast as Linda Ronstadt in the next biopic based on her life. She's a 70s rock singer with plenty of accolades. Very interesting life she's led. So Selena Gomez will be playing her in a feature film. 28 Days Later is finally getting another sequel titled 28 Years Later. It will reteam director Danny Boyle and writer Alex Garland, who has gone on to have a successful directing career of his own, in this latest iteration of the zombie franchise. Very much looking forward to what they're going to do with this movie. Hopefully, Cillian Murphy comes back as well. Antoine Fuqua is now directing a biopic based on the life of Michael Jackson, and they're keeping it in the family because Michael Jackson's nephew, Jafar Jackson, will be playing the role of his uncle. Very curious to see what they end up doing with this. Wonder how much of Michael's life will be covered in the film. We'll have to just wait and see. John Krasinski and Natalie Portman have been cast in Guy Ritchie's next film, which is titled Fountain of Youth. It will follow two estranged siblings as they partner up on a global heist. So it ties in well with our theme today of heist films. Very interested to see what Guy Ritchie's next film is. He's done several heist films, including Snatch, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. So this will be another one I'm very much looking forward to. Let's talk a little bit about Blu-ray. We're huge Blu-ray fanatics and 4K fanatics here. So let's talk about some of the upcoming films on the formats. Marvel Studios will release The Marvels on 4K and Blu-ray February 13th. So that one is coming up in just under a month. Very excited to see what they do with that, what bonus features are included, as always, highly anticipated by collectors like myself. The 355 is finally coming to 4K on March 6th. This is kind of an underrated espionage action thriller that I thought was better than most people gave it credit for. Disney's Wish will finally come to Blu-ray and 4K on March the 12th. That's their latest animated film, which was celebrating their 100th anniversary last year. K-19 The Widowmaker, one of my favorite submarine movies, which we talked about on the podcast last week, is now getting a 4K release on March 19th. So that one is one I'm definitely going to look to upgrade. Primal Fear, starring Richard Gere and Edward Norton. Edward Norton's breakout role in that film. It will finally come to 4K on March the 26th. So that is another one I will definitely look to add to my collection. Good Burger 2. It's streaming on Paramount Plus, but the streamer also decided to release a Blu-ray. I'm a huge fan of when streaming services do this. They don't do it very often, unfortunately, but Good Burger 2, I guess, was successful enough on streaming to warrant a Blu-ray release. That will also be released on March the 26th. This year, Columbia Pictures celebrating its 100th anniversary. They will be releasing several films on 4K and Blu-ray. There are going to be some special deals online, so be on the lookout for those. One film celebrating its anniversary, 10th anniversary this week, is Jack Ryan Shadow Recruit. This is the reboot of the Jack Ryan franchise. Also acts as kind of a prequel. It's sort of his origin story. I thought this was really, really well done. Kenneth Branagh directed it. Chris Pine stars along with Keira Knightley and Kevin Costner, as well as Kenneth Branagh himself playing the villain. I think this is a really solid espionage spy action thriller. It's not the best of the genre, but it gets the job done. A very entertaining film I've watched a couple of times and might even be watching again this week. All right, that's it for movie news. Let's jump into our main topic. Joining me on this episode, as usual, is Bert. How you doing, man?
Hey, man, I'm doing really. Get my voice I'm doing
Oh,
really
that's
good.
okay.
Just got the safe open and hold
Right.
on. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
no, I'm good. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm doing great. Ready to do this podcast.
Excellent. Yeah, yeah. You gotta watch out for the 5-0 could be on our tail at any moment. So the reason we picked this topic is because this new movie Lift is now streaming on Netflix. It's a heist film directed by F. Gary Gray, who's no stranger to the heist genre. He directed the Italian Job remake back in 2003 with Mark Wahlberg and Charlize Theron. This new film stars Kevin Hart. And it is again now streaming on Netflix. It's a heist film, has that kind of all the classic tropes of the genre. So we wanted to discuss that first before we jump into our top five. Um, so my thoughts on the movie, I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was great. I didn't think it was best of the genre. I mean, I've been watching heist movies all week, and so this is not among. It didn't make my top five, I guess. Spoiler alert. Um, it I felt just didn't quite grab me as much as I wanted it to. The characters to me fell a little flat. We didn't really get to know them super well. I felt over the course of the film didn't really come to really care about them as much as I wanted to. One thing that I liked about it was Kevin Hart, who is, known as a comedian, and he's always playing these comedy roles. And but here he really got to show a different side of himself. It's a much more serious role than he typically plays. It's not kind of zany and silly and over the top. It was very grounded and like a regular person. He's like playing a regular character as he usually doesn't do that. So I actually enjoyed that. I thought he actually did a good job with the role and with the performance overall. Supporting cast is good. Vincent D'Onofrio, I'm a big fan of. He doesn't really get a ton to do here, but he's solid overall. Gugu Mbatha-Raw was the lead actress in it, and I thought she was great. She's always great. I really like her. I hope she gets more roles in the future. Um, so it was fine as far as the casting goes. The story was again a kind of typical by the numbers heist film. It really wasn't anything that different. You kind of have this team that's already established, and you kind of get to go on a bit of a journey with them. Some of the visuals were pretty good. I'm not a huge fan of. I'm becoming less and less a fan of digital photography. I feel like, especially with streaming movies, for some reason they all feel so similar. Like they look the same. They're all shot like, in high def, and it's just super clear picture, and it's like the lighting and everything just doesn't I don't know, it just doesn't feel like a movie. It feels like a YouTube video to me. And I'm not a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of shooting on film and even digitally, like the Batman a couple of years back was shot digitally, but they added in grain. So it looked
Yeah,
like a film. And so I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of that whole visual style. And so that wasn't a highlight for me. It was kind of a negative. One thing that I did like was the airplane sequence, which is the big heist sequence in the film, which I thought was pretty well executed, actually. It was pretty thrilling. Some of the shots we got and some of the moments there were pretty intense and unique and something that I hadn't really seen before. It's I don't think that there's been any movie where they've done a plane heist, like that in that same way. So that was at least ambitious, and I thought for the most part they pulled it off. So that was the highlight for me. I would say if you're gonna watch the movie, maybe just watch that scene. Don't waste the full 2 hours on it, because I just again I didn't really grab me in any major way. Not one that I would care to watch again, honestly. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm at about 2 stars, so it's not one I'm a big fan of, even though it did have some positives for me. Overall, I came away and was kind of like, meh. So, Bert, what were your thoughts on Lift?
yeah. You mentioned the visuals, and that was the my first note I had written down is that it's all very slick looking,
Yeah,
and yeah, it doesn't really feel cinematic. There's something
right.
that's kind of missing
Yep.
in that.
Hmm.
I liked it a little less than you did actually. I
Oh,
I felt the some of the characters were borderline annoying. When there was humor, it was kind of like sarcastic, but it just felt really kind of stale and
yeah,
didn't really land.
right.
I didn't really think Kevin Hart was great in this. I
Okay.
feel he's almost miscast. I just don't know that
Mm,
he can carry a film. I mean, maybe
yeah,
maybe there's a film out there he can carry. I shouldn't say that because I
right.
think he's a talented guy, but
Yeah.
you know, he can be really funny. Obviously, they weren't trying to go there with this, but then I felt like as a serious actor, can he really carry this? And I don't know if you take I mean, maybe it's not a fair comparison, but like a Denzel or a Daniel Craig, like how much better would this thing have sort of leveled up, you know?
Yeah.
But I just didn't. It just and I'll talk too about the production. It just seemed like there was just lot of fictionalized things going on
Sure.
here. And if it's going to be an all-out comedy, then whatever, right?
Right,
But it
right.
was trying to be taken fairly seriously
Yeah.
and be really techy.
Mm.
And like that, I don't know, like that scene with the stealth jet where they have these, you know, plates all over it. And I thought, okay, I mean, this is I'm pretty sure the government would have this already if it was a real thing, you know,
Right.
but whatever. But then even in that like that last sequence where they said that the okay, the spoilers, okay, if anybody cares about that, but
Yeah.
okay, but there's a certain point where they have to drop from an airplane a cube of these gold bars, and they say in the film that it weighs, I think they said 10,000 tons.
Something like that. Yeah, something
Okay,
crazy.
so let's
Yeah.
say for argument's sake, the airplane can hold it,
Yeah.
and then so just on cue, they're able to drop it, and using a remote control and parachutes, they are able to steer it over this lake, and it just lands in the lake. And then later they retrieve it just by like filling these 4 ballast tanks. This 10,000 tons rises to the surface, and I'm like, come on, I don't think any of that checks out.
Yeah.
So I try not to be too picky about that, but if it's trying to
Mm.
take itself seriously, then I start looking at that stuff and going, come on, you know, that's
Yeah.
there were a lot of those kind of things where it
Sure.
was just too much of a stretch, and that's something that I try to look at as we talk about these films is
Yeah.
does it seem like they legitimately could pull these heists
Mm.
off,
Yep.
because that adds a lot to it when it's a
Oh
serious
yeah.
production,
Oh
you
yeah,
know.
for sure.
So there were some nice locales and sets, but I
Hmm.
feel like this is one where, you know, in a production meeting they wanted to check all the boxes, but it just
Mm.
kind of felt sort of soulless to me.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's almost, now the whole conversation with movies, and especially since the writer's strike, is about AI. And it almost feels like, was this written by AI? Like it's a very kind of like you're saying, kind of stale
Yeah,
delivery of certain lines and humor that just doesn't quite connect fully. So yeah, look, going into this, I wasn't expecting much, so maybe
right.
that's why I liked it a little more than you. But yeah, we're both pretty negative on it, I think, just because it doesn't seem like a whole lot of effort went into it, honestly, especially on the writing stage. And um, like I said, F. Gary Gray, he's a director that's directed several films that I really like.
Yeah,
So it's a bit of a disappointment that this latest one wasn't quite up to par with those. So, what's your star rating on this?
1.5.
1.5.
So
Gotcha.
I'm just
Okay.
about what you gave it.
Yeah, yeah, I meant two.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, right
Mhm.
there. All right. Well, if you got to see Lift, hey, maybe you loved it. So let us know in the comments what you liked about it, what you didn't like, and some of your favorite heist films. That's what we're going to get into now with our top 5 heist movies of all time. All right. Now that we have reviewed the new film Lift, now on Netflix, let's discuss our favorite heist movies ever. So this is a tough list to make because there's so many heist movies out there. But there's a lot of different types of heist movies. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what I was looking at it. I wanted my list to be not just my favorites, but ones that kind of showcased the broad spectrum of heist films and what encompasses that. So um, the way I went about doing my list is I kind of wanted each kind of subgenre, if you will, of heist to be
Mm,
present,
nice.
as well as
Mhm.
just kind of the best ones that are out there. So tried to have a good blend. And we'll see in honorable mentions. I've got those kind of separated into different categories as well. Is that kind of what
Yeah.
you did, Bert? What was your kind of philosophy going into this?
My list may not be as well rounded. I actually took sort of a narrower focus,
Oh, okay.
perhaps. I wanted to mention, you know, some heist films have like just one scene where there's a heist,
Yeah,
and the rest of the movie isn't really about the heist. So
true.
I kind of casted those out. There's some really good ones actually involving home invasions where there's sort of a heist where they're trying to get, you know, even like money or, you know, break into a safe. But
Yeah.
I think, you know, home invasions are probably you know, a separate subgenre, so I left
Mm,
that out too.
sure.
And so really I stuck more with traditional heists, especially for my top 5. I'll mention a few that are sort of outside those bounds, but yeah, more of a traditional heist. What, you know, think of when you hear heist movie, you know.
Okay, great. Excellent. All right. Well, let's jump into our honorable mentions. All right, so jumping into honorable mentions, like we said, there's so many different types of heist movies out there. I separated mine into categories. Wanted to start with a category I titled Getaway Drivers, because there's several films that are just really about the getaway driver himself.
Yeah.
And some of these are my favorites. Some of these I really, really like. So I want to start off with a classic called The Getaway with Steve McQueen. This is directed by Sam Peckinpah, came out back in the 70s. It's really good. It's a really well-made film, definitely worth checking out if you want that kind of angle on the heist genre. Another one that I like that's more recent is Baby Driver. This is directed by Edgar Wright. Very stylish movie. Almost consider this a musical because soundtrack plays such a heavy part in the film. Even the way it's edited is edited to the music, so it's a really unique looking movie. And it's got a great cast and definitely worth checking out. And then the last one in this genre, I guess you could call it a subgenre, is Fast Five, the fifth Fast and
Mm.
Furious movie, which basically they're all getaway drivers, all the characters in this movie, because it's about driving a safe out of Rio, and
Okay.
it's
I
a
think I've seen that one.
really cool movie. It's one of the best Fast and Furious films for sure, I would say. Just a really solid action movie. And another great cast. This is where Dwayne The Rock Johnson was introduced to the franchise,
Mm.
and they just did a really good job. Justin Lin directed this one and did an excellent job. So had to mention that one as well. Um, then I wanted to move into bank robbers. So a lot of heist films are bank robbery films. They're really good. These specifically are the ones that stood out to me. Heat, that's just an all-time classic. I feel like Michael Mann just did an awesome job directing this. It's got De Niro and Pacino together for the first time. You got Val Kilmer in there. Just an excellent casting. Really great scenes, really great action, a very realistic take on the
Yeah.
genre. They shot it in downtown LA, and it's known for this big shootout that they have towards the end of the movie. Just a great, really well-made movie that they're actually now talking about doing a sequel to, which is interesting. So it'd be interesting to see what they do with that. But Heat is it's a must see. It's a great film. And then a couple other bank robber movies. One is called The Town with Ben Affleck, who also directed this. It's got Jeremy Renner in it, John Hamm. It's just got an excellent cast all the way throughout. It's really well made. Another one that's very well shot and edited, but The Town is excellent. It's definitely worth watching. It's loosely based on true events of things that happened in Boston. So definitely check that one out if you haven't. And then last in the bank robbery genre, this was the hardest one to kind of leave out because it is one of my favorite movies, probably of the past decade, honestly. It's called Hell or High Water. This is with Chris Pine and Ben Foster. They play brothers who are trying to save the family farm, which is going into foreclosure. So they start robbing banks, and Jeff Bridges and Gil Birmingham play the kind of Texas Rangers that are after them. And it's a great kind of dynamic between the two Texas Rangers and the two brothers and the relationships and everything. It's very character based type film. So more of a drama than a kind of fast paced action movie, but definitely worth checking out. Kind of a modern Western in many ways. Is kind
Okay.
of how I look at it. So yeah, definitely worth checking out as well. So those are a couple of my categories. I got a few more, but Bert, why don't you give us some of your honorable mentions?
Yeah. Just first of all, Fast Five, I wanted to mention. I think I saw
Mm.
that one, and that's there's there a scene where they're dragging the safe down the road, pulling
Yes.
it behind a car. Yeah,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
had some crazy stunts in it.
It
Yeah,
is. Yeah.
yeah,
Definitely.
good stuff. Yeah, so I have a few, and I decided to put them into two categories for my honorable mentions: serious heist movies
Mm.
and funny heist movies. So
Great.
so I'll do the serious ones first.
Okay.
I'll run those down here. First, we have a film that's I think it's in my top 12 of all time films, and that's Inception,
Oh,
which is kind of a very much more non-traditional heist film,
definitely.
but
Definitely.
it's very much a heist. But I
Yeah.
didn't focus on that because again, I was kind of going more traditional
Sure.
with my analysis. So I mean, it's obviously a fabulous film.
Yeah.
And then I have The Town, which you mentioned, and that's a
Mm.
different one because it really you think it's going to be one movie, and then it ends up being about this sort of twist in a romantic relationship
Yeah, yeah,
that's very, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it really. Just
yeah.
scandalous. That's the word I want.
Sure, sure. Yeah, yeah. Right.
Yeah. So that's but it's good. I think I give that 3.5 stars.
Yeah.
And then a couple just solid, serious bank robbery films, and that is Armored
Mm.
and Wrath of Man. So those are
Oh,
two really, really good. 3.5 star. Just
okay.
if you're looking for a good series, good serious heist movies, I'd recommend both of those. Wrath of Man might be Statham's best film. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious about that one because I think was that Guy Ritchie that did that?
That sounds right.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
think it was him. That's one I haven't seen yet, but I've heard it was pretty good.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. And then a couple more serious ones here. Ronin, which is, I mean, it's somewhat of a heist film. I mean, they are trying to steal things and that kind of thing.
Right.
Ronin, of course, probably has the best car chase scenes of any movie ever, perhaps.
Oh yeah.
Then I got to mention Drive
Mm,
with Ryan Gosling.
mm.
And I watched this again. It's just a very good sort of heist drama.
Yep.
Surprisingly violent. There's
It
sometimes
is.
where they really lean into that, and
Yeah.
it takes it down a little bit for me because it's just a little bit too
Mm,
much for the kind
sure.
of film you think you're watching.
Right.
But honestly, I give that 4 out of 5 stars. I mean, I really liked Drive.
Great.
Then there's a really good one that's lesser known called The Lookout, starring
Mm.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, he plays a guy that had a head injury,
Mm,
and so he's dealing with that. Young guy in his 20s,
mm,
and so he starts working at a bank, and then he gets approached about doing something at the bank, and so it's just an unexpected, just really good drama, and it doesn't entirely focus on the heist the whole time though. So again,
mm.
I didn't put it in my top ones.
Gotcha.
And then the last serious one I've got is one called The Owners. Have you
Mm.
seen this one?
No.
It's okay. It's yeah, it would be lesser known, especially in the States here, but
Mm,
it's a British film,
mm.
and it's actually a psychological horror heist film
Oh.
about these sort of bumbling thieves that break into a house, and then just everything kind of goes sideways. There is a little bit of comedy just because of the misfortune they find themselves in,
Right.
but it's definitely a horror film.
Huh.
It's a little bit creepy, but mostly serious, but it is a fun, entertaining heist film nonetheless. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I'll definitely add that to the watch list. That sounds interesting. My next couple categories here, I really consider them like cross genres, kind of a mixing of the genres. So
Yeah.
one of them is Ant-Man. Ant-Man is a,
Yeah.
Marvel superhero movie, one of my favorite of the MCU. And it's a heist movie. I mean, it's all about
Yeah.
them pulling off
Yeah.
this big elaborate heist with these crazy superpowers that they have. So that's definitely one of my favorites. And then as you mentioned before, Inception, just maybe my favorite Nolan movie. Honestly, it's just so good. Every element of it, the emotional story that Leonardo DiCaprio's character is going through,
Yeah.
as well as
Yeah.
the incredible visuals and the score is just iconic. So that's one that I
Hmm.
had to mention. But like you said, it's more sci-fi heist, so I just decided to throw that one out. And another
Yeah.
sci-fi one is Solo, the Star Wars film
Oh.
directed by Ron Howard, who did this spin-off with a young Han Solo here. And this is all about them pulling off a big heist.
Hmm.
The heist sequence is great. It looks really cool, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah, that one's definitely worth checking out. Then I went into some Western. So as we said, Hell or High Water is kind of a modern Western. These are older ones. This first one, it's called High Sierra. This is kind of a Western mixed with a noir film because it all
Hmm.
takes place in the 40s, so it's still that kind of noir
Okay.
era, but it's taking place like out in the desert, a lot of it. So it's an interesting kind of mix of a bunch of different stuff. But what's cool about this Blu-ray is it's a two-disc version, and the second disc is a movie called Colorado Territory, which is a straight Western directed by the same guy, based on the same book. So it's essentially he remade his
Huh.
own movie as a Western, which is pretty neat. And I actually preferred that one to High Sierra. So if you're at all a fan of Westerns, it's all about a railroad robbery, which is a lot of fun and a kind of fun sequence they do there with the
Okay.
train. But made way back in the 40s, that one was. Both of those movies were made back in the 1940s. So if you're into older films, check those out. And then the last one I'll mention here, it's a film called The War Wagon. This is with both John Wayne and Kirk Douglas. I think it's the only time those two heavyweight A-list actors teamed up together. And they did a great job here. I think it's a lot of fun. The titular wagon that they have to attack and heist is heavily armored and all kinds of guys inside it with all kinds of weapons. And it's a fun kind of action sequence, the heist in that one. So definitely worth checking out. I also like it because Wayne and Douglas, they're playing kind of worst enemies because one of them tried to hunt the other one down years prior. And so they're kind of enemies trying to work together, which gives it a cool dynamic too. So check out the War Wagon if you haven't done that yet. I've just got a few more that kind of fall into traditional heist films, but why don't you go ahead and give us your more comedic ones, Bert?
Okay, and I want to say on westerns, I'm not a huge fan of that genre, but I feel like there's
Sure.
a lot of robbing that goes on in those kind of films, right?
There are. Yeah, it's typically just the bad guys though, and it's only like maybe one little
Yeah,
scene.
yeah, yeah,
Whereas these that I mentioned, they really focus in on the heist.
yeah. Gotcha. Nice. Yeah. So my flip side to the serious heist ones, I've got a few honorable mentions that are comedies, and one of them is one I revisited, hadn't seen in decades, and that's
Hmm.
Three Fugitives with um Martin Short
I saw your
and
review on
Mel.
Letterbox for this. I want to check it out.
Yeah, and I'd recommend it, although the comedy really is mostly in that first half hour, but it is so funny. I mean,
Right.
Martin Short's probably some of his best work. It's just very, very physical. I mean, Nick Nolte just ragdolls him. I mean, multiple times. I mean, I'd be shocked if he didn't have bruises. Little
Right.
Martin Short, that is. But that's a fun one. Then I watched one here, Tower Heist, which has a lot of
Hmm.
actors in it that are known. Ben Stiller being probably the biggest one. It came out maybe 10 or so years ago,
Right.
and it's a really fun concept. Ben Stiller operates, he runs this big hotel in New
Hmm.
York City, and they try to uh, rob it, but or rob a person in it actually. But it's decent. But I mean, I'm at 2.5 stars on it. There actually were few laughs, and I was really surprised because it could have used some more humor.
Yeah, I remember watching that and being pretty disappointed too.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was expecting a lot funnier movie given the
yeah.
cast, and it yeah, didn't really land for me.
Well, that's kind of like with Lift. I mean, especially with the trailer. I mean, they definitely sold more of the comedy angle.
Yeah, I agree.
Next one, I've got one called Mad Money. Have you seen this one?
I've heard of it, haven't seen it.
Okay, it's these three ladies that work at the Federal Reserve, and then they plot to steal some money from it. And it's Diane Keaton, Queen Latifah, and Katie Holmes, and
Oh,
it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
okay.
3-star film.
Okay, cool.
Recommend that. You mentioned Ant-Man. That's one I had.
Yeah.
Gone in 60 Seconds is it's they're stealing a bunch of vehicles, but it's somewhat of a heist. So I didn't really put
Sure.
it in my top five, but I'll tell you, I've seen that film numerous times, loads of funny lines from it, and
Yeah.
just a lot of fun stuff going on in that film. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, I have. It's been a while actually since I've
Mm.
watched that. I'd like to watch it again because I do remember it quite fondly.
Yeah, yeah, funny movie. Then I've got an excellent one that I really wanted to put in my top five, but this is my last comedy I'll mention for an honorable mention, and that is A Fish Called Wanda.
Oh, yeah. Great one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and actually it starts out with this theft of a jewelry store, and
Right.
then it's all aftermath. I mean, the
Yeah.
entire film is all aftermath, and the double crosses
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. But
Right.
it is so funny. I think this came up one time before because this we were talking about theater experience. Me and a buddy were just pounding the seats with laughter. I mean,
Right.
back years ago at least, it just really was. It still is very funny. Kevin Kline won an Oscar for it for best supporting actor, I believe. But I
Well
had to mention
deserved.
that one. Almost
Yeah.
made my top five.
Great. Great one. Great one. Excellent. All right. Well, we'll get into a few of mine now. Actually, I'll kind of go along with what you're talking about and do some comedies. So first one is Fantastic Mr. Fox,
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
which does have a fun kind of heist sequence in it. And so had to mention that one. That's one the
Mhm.
family watches constantly here. So had to bring that one up. Another one I rewatched yesterday, The Great Muppet Caper,
Oh.
which is the second Muppet movie, the first one to be directed by Jim Henson himself.
Mm.
And it's great. It's, the Muppets get caught up in this big heist plot, this big, robbery plot
Okay.
over in Europe. It all takes place in Europe,
Ah.
which gives it a kind of unique setting. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that one's definitely worth checking out as well. And then I've got a few more here, just kind of traditional heist films that for one reason or another just didn't quite make the cut. But all these are in my personal collection, so I like them quite a lot. Aforementioned Italian Job. I've seen this movie so many times. It's
Yeah,
just
it's pretty
super
good.
well executed, well
Mhm.
done, great cast. Kind of a revenge plot. There's two heists because it starts off with a heist, and then there's another heist later in the film, and it's just really, really well done, tight, great action,
Mm.
great car
Yeah,
stunts, and all that stuff. So
yeah, definitely.
I had to bring that up. And then Tarantino's done a couple. This first one, it's his first film, Reservoir Dogs. It doesn't
Mm.
show you the heist. It's again, like you were talking about Fish Called Wanda, it's really all aftermath. You kind
Mm.
of see
Yeah,
them team up. The heist kind of happens off screen, and then you see what's happening afterwards and kind of the chaos that ensues. So that's one that I quite enjoy. And then the other one he did that I think is his best film, Jackie Brown. This is a really good kind of caper.
yeah, that was
Um,
pretty good.
yeah, I really like this movie. I like this cast a lot. It's very kind of mature in its kind of themes and relationships, and very different from most of Tarantino's other films. I feel like this is a great one. Definitely worth checking out. Had to mention the Ocean's trilogy. All three of
Mm.
these are just great heist movies. I feel like I really like all of them. First one I feel like is definitely the best, and it's of course a remake of the original Ocean's 11. It's one of the few remakes that I feel like is actually superior to the original.
Yeah,
And so yeah, Soderbergh directed all those with a lot of style, and of course
yeah.
huge ensemble casts of A-list actors that are all just really fun to watch kind of interact. So that was that one. And then there's another one by Hitchcock called To Catch a Thief. And this one's different because it's not so much about a heist as it's about a guy trying to catch someone who's doing heists. So you don't really see the heist necessarily happening, but you
Gotcha.
see the guy kind of chasing after the thief. And Cary Grant and Grace Kelly are great in this. He's a former thief. That's why they kind of recruit him to chase after
Oh,
this other thief. And so very well done, very, very well made film. Hitchcock made this all in Europe and just beautiful scenery and just a great film. So that's a classic that's worth watching. And then the last one is another classic from 1950, a director I really like called John Huston, directed several classic films. It's called The Asphalt Jungle.
mm.
And this is a really cool kind of many people consider it the prototypical heist movie. I mean, it's got all the tropes that we see in all these other movies, like,
Yeah,
the guy that just got out of jail that's like, I want to get out. And he's like, no, you got to do this one last job. And then he's got to recruit a team and they've got to make the plan
yeah.
and they've got to do the heist. So it's got all those tropes were really started in this movie, essentially. So if you want to kind of look back to the history of film and figure out where all these heist kind of tropes came from, this is the one to watch. It's a great movie, very hard to keep it out. I just felt like there was another movie from that era that did it a little bit better, which I
Mm.
included. So yeah, Asphalt Jungle is worth checking out. And this Criterion edition is excellent. It looks really good, sounds really good, has a lot of bonus features too.
Nice. Is Asphalt Jungle a is that a reference to New York City, like Concrete Jungle?
I think yeah, I'm not sure if it is New York specifically. No, it's
Okay.
actually somewhere in the Midwest,
Oh,
is what
really?
it
Okay.
says. So yeah, I think it's just the fact that it's a big city
Yeah.
somewhere.
Gotcha.
Yeah. All right, is that all your honorable mentions?
That is.
Great. All right, well, now it is time to jump into our top five heist movies of all time. Here we go. All right, folks, well, that is it for our honorable mentions. Now we're into our top five heist films of all time. Bert, go ahead and kick us off. What do you got at number five?
At number five, I've got a pretty traditional heist film. This one starring Denzel Washington. Inside Man is the name of it.
Oh, yes, I still need to see this, man.
Yeah, yeah, and just for a serious heist film, this one just really nails sort of the intensity, and Denzel's performance is one of his best. I mean, I would
Hmm,
almost put it in his top performances, top five. But so it's way more ambitious than you might even think. Well worth seeking out. There's a lot of twists and turns, like a lot of these films, right? There's always people, uh, turning on each other and things like
right.
that.
Sure.
So, but I like the road that this one takes you down. Sometimes when with twists and turns, it's not always that satisfying, but
Sure.
This one's really good. And I mentioned Denzel. He's just very animated in this role.
Mm,
Sometimes he's a lot more subdued.
yeah.
And he plays a cop here. So yeah, I've seen there's other movies in which he's done that, but this one's very animated.
Yeah.
Clive Owen, he's never really very animated,
Right.
but he's good as well. The entire cast really is great. Jodie Foster, Christopher Plummer, Willem
Mm,
Dafoe,
mm.
Chiwetel Ejiofor. Did I say that right?
Chiwetel Ejiofor. Yeah. Tough one.
Yeah, yeah. And directed by Spike Lee. A little
Yeah.
bit different than a lot of his. Well, all of his films are pretty unique, actually, but
Right.
I think he does a good job, and it's a great looking film too. So it's a 4-star film, but would definitely make my top 5.
Great. Excellent. Yeah, that one's high on my watch list. I definitely want to seek that one out soon and find it. All right, great pick. So with my number five, I went with kind of a traditional one, but it is definitely more on the comedic side. It's another film from Steven Soderbergh, who did the Ocean's trilogy. After he did that trilogy, he did a movie called Logan Lucky. Logan Lucky is, yeah, it's kind of went under the radar. Not a lot of people know about
Yeah,
this. It came out in 2017. And I don't know why. I guess maybe it didn't have as big a budget, and maybe it just wasn't marketed as well. I'm not exactly sure why it's not as well known, but it's a movie that I just have a blast with. I prefer this one to the Ocean's trilogy. Any of the Ocean's movies, I would rather watch this one because it feels it's more comedic and more kind of outlandish a little bit. It's still grounded. It's just the characters are so funny. The characters and the relationships, the way they interact is so great. A little more relatable because I consider this the blue collar heist film to Ocean's white collar heist film because it all takes place in the South. And it's about them robbing a racetrack, a race car track, like a NASCAR
okay.
event or something. So it's a kind of different setting than we get in most
Yeah,
heist movies. It's not a big city, or it's not a casino or a bank or anything like that. So it's this raceway, and just again the characters are great. We've got Daniel Craig, putting on a very convincing Southern accent, much like he did in Knives Out. Although this is a
right.
different kind of accent, but he just nails that. Channing Tatum, it's probably my favorite film he's ever been in. Adam Driver, who I'm a huge fan of from the sequel trilogy of Star Wars. Riley Cuff, and then it's got other actors like Hilary Swank shows up, Katie Holmes, even Seth MacFarlane shows up in a kind of silly role. Um, and so it's just tons of fun to watch. It's really enjoyable, has a great pace. It has, some just great writing. It's the central heist is just again unique because of the setting and what they're trying to do and where they have to go, and just the whole look of the movie is quite different than what we're getting in most films in this genre just because of where it takes place. And at the heart of it, what really makes me adore it even more is that it's really a father-daughter story. The parents have separated, and the father's trying to help support his daughter and kind of be the kind of guy that she can look up to, but he is on hard times, doesn't have any money, and so he's kind of forced into this heist. And so it's just tons of fun, really really enjoyable. It's again, it just came out in 2017, so it hasn't been around that long, but it's one me and my wife have watched several times. We both get a kick out of it, and maybe because we're from the South, we were like, oh, that's kind of like our relatives there. We kind of relate to them a little bit. I won't say which ones, but it's tons of fun. It's really enjoyable. Definitely one that is rewatchable too. Like I said, we've watched it many times over and over again. And so yeah, if you haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one. You mentioned the South. As I think about it, they don't often stage heist films in the South for some reason.
Really don't. Yeah, I don't know why, if there's a reason. I mean, I guess just the big cities are kind of associated with crime and that kind of thing, but there's
Yeah,
crime down here
yeah,
too. So yeah, it's cool to
sure.
see a different kind of take on it. It's just kind of fun. All right, Bert, let's get into your number four.
So at 4, I've got another horror heist film, and that's Army of the Dead.
Great pick. Yes, I meant to mention that in my honorable mentions because man, what a great, that was supposed to be in my sci-fi ones with
Gotcha.
Ant-Man and Inception. So yeah, great pick.
Given. Yeah. And it's obviously a very unique heist film, because there aren't many that are. I don't know if there's any other zombie heist films. I
Not
can't
that
think
I
of
know
one.
of.
Right, right. I mean, not that the zombies are performing the heist.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
um,
that'd be even funnier.
yeah. And honestly, this is probably the best looking zombie film by far, and maybe my favorite zombie film. Um, I really like the setting of Vegas, the look of this sort of post-apocalyptic Vegas,
Right.
um, that opening scene, where it it's one of Zack Snyder's best sequences in any of his films, that sort of recaps what happened to
Yeah,
Vegas.
yeah.
And I think
It's
you
like a
and I,
montage.
it's a montage.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I don't know if I've ever felt such a like an opposing feeling between the music and what's on screen.
Yeah,
I think back when this came out, I put something on the Facebook group about it, and I think you or others perhaps thought like that the Viva Las Vegas song actually matched it well, but I just like I like to turn off the music and just watch, because
sure.
to me I just felt like, I mean, clearly Zack Snyder wanted something, he wanted to lighten it a little bit, and
Right.
so I get that definitely worked, but I guess I would have preferred to lean into what the visuals are really showing, and
Right.
something more serious I think would have been amazing there,
Yeah,
because it's just an amazing sequence.
it is.
Yeah, something like what I hope we get in A Quiet Place Part 3 coming up here.
Ooh, that's right.
Although Zack Snyder's not behind it, but hopefully
Sure.
we'll get some of that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
because the prequel, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So in any case, Army of the Dead, very intense,
Yeah.
throughout pretty much the entire film. There's some really sharp, biting humor too throughout that I really enjoy.
Yep.
Zach's script might be one of his best scripts,
Hmm.
and it's a little too much gore. Zombie films in general, I like them quite a bit. I just don't love the like extreme gore. So
Sure.
it's kind of weird, because I'm drawn to those films for the scariness, but I
Yeah.
don't love it when there's a lot of gore, and clearly there's a lot here. So it does get to be a bit much for my personal taste.
Right.
Zack Snyder puts in here a lot of stuff I haven't seen in a zombie film before too. That there's that like queen zombie, and
Oh,
there's a
yeah.
tiger zombie, and just
Right.
really neat things.
Yeah.
So it's kind of getting away from the idea about the heist, but obviously they're trying to break in and steal Vegas money, so that
Yes.
before it gets nuked, right? I mean, that's
Right.
kind of a very fun idea.
It
And
is.
Dave Bautista and Tig Notaro and a lot of the other principals are just terrific.
Yeah.
And the film is quite emotional at times. Dave
Mm-hmm.
Bautista's daughter and he, I mean, there's some real good scenes there too. So, I mean, I'm at least at 4 stars on this. But just as a film, um, it might be the best looking heist film, even, but it's just really high up there. Really liked Army of the Dead, especially on the second viewing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great one too. I think I'm at 4.5 stars on it.
Mm.
It's just fantastic. The whole look of it. It's one that Zack Snyder actually decided to shoot himself. So he's a cinematographer on it.
Oh,
So he was
okay.
behind the camera a lot
Yeah.
while he was directing and everything. And it's yeah, it's a great film. But Batista, I think it's might be his best performance he's ever given. There's just a lot he
It's
has
up
to
there.
play there
Yeah.
emotionally and then as
Hmm.
well as the action. So yeah,
Hmm.
he's great. It's a great kind of crew that get together of different
Yeah.
personalities and yeah, like you're saying, the Vegas setting was great. All kinds of unique zombie stuff, like you're saying with the tiger, and
Mhm.
there's kind of like a hierarchy, and like there's different
Yeah. Yeah.
ones, and there's
Right.
ones that like it's hinted at they might be like robots, like their eyes are glowing in a weird way, and
Yeah.
like there's
Yeah.
he set up a really cool world with this film. Like it's not just a cool
Yeah.
zombie movie, it's like a cool world that he built and they are doing an animated series based on it, as well as a sequel called I think they're calling it Planet of the Dead, and it's going to
And was
expand
there
on
a
the whole
TV
thing.
show too?
Not yet. I don't think there's been
Oh,
one yet based on this
okay.
film.
But the sequel's
But
not out yet.
sequel's not out yet. He's
Okay.
doing Rebel Moon, and then he's going to go back. Actually, there's rumors
Oh,
that he's hinted that they might connect Rebel Moon with Army of the Dead somehow, which would be a cool. Because remember, the opening of Army of the Dead is Area 51. They're driving out of. and it's hinted that it might
Yeah.
be an alien like disease or something. So
Uh-huh.
it
Yeah.
could be a whole big world he's building, a whole
Interesting.
universe of, the Snyderverse. He's really building the actual Snyderverse now.
The second Snyderverse. Yeah, that's
Right,
awesome.
right. So yeah, great pick, great pick. Um, all right, let's move on to my number four. My number four is a 1981 film by another director we've already mentioned, directed Heat. His name's Michael Mann. He directed a film called Thief.
Hmm.
Thief is one of the few heist films in the 80s. I feel like there weren't a lot in the 80s, like really big, great heist movies, but Thief was Michael Mann's first film that he ever directed. And it stars the late, great James Caan in an early role of his. And he's playing title character, the thief, who is basically a safe cracker. So the movie opens with him on a heist already. It's a really great sequence. This one's all in New York. It's a very New York movie. All
Yeah.
the locations and everything, and all the characters are very New York. But what I like about Thief is that it's very character centric, which I think is kind of the theme going through a lot of these ones that I picked. But this one and my number three are probably the most character centric in that they're focused on one character who is a part of this heist, and kind of what he gets caught up in. This one again has all those tropes. He's trying to get out. He's kind of lived this life of crime. He's kind of done with it. He doesn't want any part of it anymore. And he finds a young lady he wants to settle down with. And so what's interesting about it is that while we don't have a lot of heists, there's really only two heists, the one in the very beginning and then there's one towards the end. Everything in the middle is really all about kind of his domestic situation, how he's trying to kind of leave the life behind and all these kind of, crime bosses that he's dealing with and his partner he's dealing with. And partner is played by James Belushi in one of his
Oh,
earliest
really?
roles too. So yeah, so it's really good. It feels very authentic, very realistic, one of those types of movies. James Caan, like I said, he's just incredible in it, does a great job. He's kind of he can fly off the handle at certain points, but he's also has these very soft, kind of quiet moments as well. So a very dynamic character, and you get just there's no flashbacks in it, but just through the dialogue and through the scenes, you get his whole backstory of kind of where he came from, why he ended up this way. And it's just really compelling stuff, very well
Nice.
written. Michael Mann just does a great job, even though it's his first movie directing the film. Has a very noir kind of style, neo noir, style in the camera work and the lighting, a lot of shadow and stuff like that, and a lot of it's on the streets of New York. So it gives it that authentic, realistic feel. And then the score is done by Tangerine Dream, who actually did quite a few film scores. I know they did one for Ridley Scott's medieval fantasy film Legend with Tom Cruise, and that's one of my favorite film scores. And this is another great one. Adds to the kind of style and the tone of the movie, kind of dark and dreary, and but it has moments of lightness too. So just a really well-made movie, well-balanced movie, one that I just got to watch for the second time. But it's one that it just on the second viewing hit me even harder. The first time I really liked it, but this time I liked it even more. So it
Wow.
went way up in the rankings. It was kind of down
Yeah.
lower, and after I rewatched it, it went way up. So yeah, that's one worth checking out. I actually don't have it. I want to get the Criterion Collection does have a Blu-ray edition that I want to get, so that's on the wish list. So have you seen
Nice.
this one?
No, no, I haven't
Okay.
heard of it.
Yeah, definitely worth checking out if you can get your hands on it.
Nice.
Let's move on to your number three, Bert. What is it?
Okay, I have got another gritty heist film. This
Hmm.
one's called Den of Thieves from 2018.
Oh, see, this was I really wanted to watch this. I didn't get a chance to watch it. I think it's on Netflix. But I
I think
have
so.
not had a chance to watch it yet.
Yeah, and this one even more so than the Denzel film. I mean,
Hmm.
is just very realistic. This one is sort of the not gimmick, but this one draws you in because the idea of it is that what if the cops going after these this crew of bank robbers, what if they're worse than the actual robbers, like as far
Right,
as
right,
what they do in their personal time and how they treat criminals and that kind of thing.
right, right.
Led by one of the cops, the main um, investigator or whatever you want to call it. I think he's a sheriff actually, is Gerard Butler,
Oh.
and it's one of his best performances. This is very much an action film, and he does a lot of action. So in a lot of those films, he doesn't get a lot of chance to show, present a lot of character work, and he does here.
Hmm.
And then this other guy, this sort of the leader of the crew, his name is Pablo Schreiber. Not a
Hmm.
guy that I've really seen before,
Hmm.
but I'm so glad they casted kind of an unknown because he's fantastic. He's really intimidating.
Oh.
And together they make a really terrific, tense duo.
Okay.
And the script is great. There's a lot of cat and mouse kind of back and forth with the two of them.
Yeah.
It's really a lot more cerebral than your typical heist film, and especially for an action film.
Hmm.
And I'm gonna say something kind of controversial here. This I feel like is the film that Heat should have been, because I'm not a huge fan of Heat. I didn't
Oh.
hate
Okay.
Heat,
Okay.
but but I just kind of thought Heat was just sort of like, oh, it's Pacino and De Niro, so it's automatically awesome. And when I watch it, I kind of feel like it's good, but I don't
Yeah.
I don't like this film. Den of Thieves is considered. Some people feel like it's a unnamed remake of Heat,
Oh. Oh. Okay.
and I'm sure I'm in the minority, but I actually think this is much better because this
Okay.
is a fantastic film. The character work I think is it's a lot less traditional.
Hmm.
Some of the things they do here, but I just really recommend it. And unless you're so much a fan of Heat that it turns you off or something. But so it's kind of a hot take there
Okay.
on that.
Yeah.
But there's it's one of those films that while you're watching it, you just kind of feel nervous because the characters they feel so authentic, and you're not sure what they're going to do next. Almost kind of scared. That's the way I felt like this entire film. I mean,
Wow.
both the good guys and the bad guys. It just
Hmm.
really had an effect on me, and it's actually the second time I've seen it. And whereas most heist films kind of focus on a lot of them focus on the planning of the heist,
Hmm.
this one is really the heist is at the end. Well, there is a heist early on,
Hmm.
but then it's all character development for like an
Right.
hour and a half,
Yeah.
and then the heist happens at the end. So
Okay.
by the end, you really feel like these guys, and the
Yeah.
action's really good too.
Hmm.
Um, and then it has kind of a surprise ending, which again, after I watched it, I checked into this. A lot of people don't like the sort of surprise ending. I thought it was really good. It's maybe a bit rushed, probably
Hmm.
for runtime, but I thought it
Hmm.
was excellent. This is at least a 4-star film for me, if not 4.5. I strongly recommend it, and I think the sequel's coming out in a maybe this year or next year.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, I didn't know there was a sequel in development. That's great. Yeah, I've definitely heard of it. I think my dad is the one who recommended it to me.
Yeah.
But I just still haven't turned it on. So yeah, I'll definitely be watching that one soon. That sounds great. Excellent. All right. Moving on to my number three, one that you already mentioned in your honorable mentions, Drive.
Oh yeah, good
Uh,
one. Yeah.
Drive, man, this movie is so good. I've watched it several times since it came
Mm.
out. Again, about well, it's what's cool about it, he's a getaway driver for these, heists kind of on the weekends, right? And then his day job is he's a stunt man. He's a stunt driver
Yeah.
for movies, which
Right.
is cool. So it's all based
Yeah.
in LA, a lot of, LA locations, and it's all shot out over there. But Ryan Gosling, man, this is an actor that I, just think is one of the best working today. I really
Yeah.
do. I think he's
Yeah.
every performance he gives, whatever movie it is, it's always great. And this is a movie where he gets to do something very different where he's a very quiet character. He says, I don't know, maybe 50 words the whole
Yeah. You're
movie.
right. You're
He
right.
doesn't really talk a lot at all, but it's all in his eyes. It's all in his face. You can just
Yeah.
tell what's going on, what's going through his head.
How
And
great is it when a movie when they just sometimes let the atmosphere and the characters like just let the film breathe a little bit sometimes.
yes, I love that. I love that. Just pure cinema, just visual storytelling, let the
Yeah.
camera do the
Yeah.
work, let the actor do the work.
Hmm.
The soundtrack, the soundtrack is great
Yeah.
here. The score is really, really good. So yeah, it's a movie with a lot of style.
Hmm.
It's another one of these sort of neo-noir, a lot of interesting lighting and single light sources and shadow and stuff like that. Very beautiful to look at. But Gosling's character, again, this is another one that's very character centric. It's all about him, what he's going through, what he wants. You can tell there's this longing to kind of leave this life behind and settle down. And he meets, this young woman and her son, and her husband's in prison, and he comes out of prison, and then he gets caught up again in kind of an even bigger mess than he was already in. And so it's just kind of one of those that kind of spirals. It's one of those movies that kind of builds its intensity as the movie goes along. And like you were saying before, a lot of very violent sequences happen that I'd kind of, because it had been a little bit since I'd seen this. I watched it last night. I
Yeah,
was
me
like,
too.
whoa,
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
bloody. Definitely gets pretty bloody, pretty gruesome. So,
yeah,
but again, that's all a part of the story, right? Of like, this is how bad this is. This is why he needs to get out of the situation because it's just awful.
right.
Um, Great supporting cast. Carey Mulligan, who's an actress I really like. She was just in Maestro with Bradley Cooper, which is on Netflix now. You can check that out. She's just a phenomenal actress. Oscar Isaac, who plays her husband, is always great. Christina
Yeah.
Hendricks is great in this. Then we've got, guys like Bryan Cranston, Albert Brooks, Ron Perlman, just a
Hmm.
really, really good cast of just very talented actors,
Yeah.
all just doing a great job, very convincing in each of their roles, which was great. It's always great when you can get kind of you almost forget it's the actor and it's just the character on screen. So yeah, it's just a very kind of straightforward, simple movie, very fairly simple,
Hmm.
but very
Right. Right.
effective
Yeah.
and impactful. This one kind of sits with you for a minute after you've watched it, and so yeah, it has both style and substance come together here, and just really one of the best modern movies, I would say. One I can watch anytime. And the director Nicholas Winding Refn is an interesting younger filmmaker. He's only made a few movies, but very interesting movie maker. And this is my favorite that he's done for sure. So yeah, definitely worth checking out Drive. The Blu-ray has a lot of bonus features too. It has a whole interview with the director and a few different featurettes on the behind the scenes kind of making of the film. So yeah, again, another one if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out.
It's still hard to believe that Gosling is that same kid from Remember the Titans.
I know, right? Yeah, he's been acting a long time. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's played so many different types of roles. Like I
Uh-huh.
said, I think he can do anything. I mean, it's pretty
Yes.
incredible to see what he's done.
Yeah. Is he this generation's Edward Norton?
I think he could be. I think he could be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a very talented guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Definitely. All right, Bert, we're on to your number two. What do you got?
Bringing one back around. Ocean's 11 is my number
Mm,
two.
great one. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a modern classic, I feel like. It's
Yeah.
like one of those just solid movies all around.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one great looking film. I'll tell you what.
Yes.
And it's got a great sort of snappy, jazzy score, right
Hmm.
throughout. And there's Ocean's 11, but there's also a lot of other characters in this that are played by well-known actors, Andy
Oh yeah.
Garcia, and and so on. And it would have been easy to let a lot of them. So many movies that do this, you don't really feel like you know a character, but this movie is very artful at making us feel like we know a little bit about every one of those characters, and then some. Some of the
Yeah,
other
which is hard
characters.
to do with such a big cast like that, but they do
Yeah,
it very effectively.
editing is so good, so
Definitely.
key.
Yep.
Is masterclass in editing with this film. It's a stretch that this heist could work, but again, I'm here for the comedy with this film. I'm laughing in every scene.
Right.
Repeat viewings, I find other things that are funny. So it's one I visited a few times. But the film does actually take a lot of effort to try to explain how they're doing what they're doing, even if ultimately you're like, I don't think that would actually all get carried off. They still
Right.
make those efforts, and it's somewhat, believable, somewhat framed in as believable.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is just a very rewatchable, witty
Hmm.
comedy is how I
Yep.
look at this.
Definitely. I got to watch my Blu-ray has the commentary with
Yeah, yeah,
it's with the director Steven Soderbergh and the writer. So that was interesting to get both
yeah,
perspectives on the filmmaking. And yeah, the writer did talk about how they wanted to make sure they explained everything and kind of made sense, and it was kind of entertaining and worked for the movie. So yeah, it went
yeah.
through they were kind of constantly working on the script throughout the filmmaking process.
Mhm.
But yeah, it turned out great. And like I said, it's the original is good. I enjoyed the original with the Rat Pack.
Yeah,
But I just feel like again, this one, the amount of thought and effort that went into it, the stylish camera work, great editing, like you
yes,
mentioned, the music, the cast, and the way they'll just bounce off each other. I mean, there's some scenes with like 10 or 11 people in the same room in the same scene, and they're all kind of bouncing off each other. And the director talked about how when he would go into a scene like that, he would kind of just let the actors go where they wanted to go and kind of just, yeah, if you want to
Yeah.
sit there, go ahead. And, he didn't have like anything specific in his mind. He really wanted it to feel kind of natural, and
Well,
I
yeah, you
think
know, a
that
lot of those
helped.
guys are friends, and it if you
Yes,
didn't know before, you might figure that out while you're watching the film because they all have sort of that buddy chemistry that didn't need to
yes,
be built in. It's already there. You know, these are guys that
exactly.
razz each other and hang out, outside of the set. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, yeah. Great pick. Great pick. All right. Well, my number two is another one we've already mentioned. You mentioned it earlier. It is Ronin from
Mm,
1998. Man, so I'd seen Ronin, I think only once, maybe, I mean, fairly recent, a couple of years ago, 3, 4 years ago, probably for the first time.
okay. Yeah.
Really enjoyed it, thought it was great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Watched it again this week, and man, it was just like, whoa. I mean, this is an incredible movie.
Yeah.
Not just heist movie, but just movie in general. The way
Right.
it's shot, again, all on location over in Europe.
Hmm.
Um, De Niro, I find to be so just charismatic in this role, but he's not really doing a lot. He's doing a lot with a little, a lot like
Hmm.
Ryan Gosling in Drive. I feel like he's very kind of man of few words,
Yeah.
almost kind of stoic in many ways, but uh, is really good here. Jean Reno, who I think is fantastic in everything. Leon the
Yeah. Yeah.
Professional is another one of my favorite action movies, and he's great there as well. Um, and
Lift
then
wasn't his better. Lift wasn't one of his better roles
yeah, right. Yes,
or
exactly right.
movies, at least.
Right. Exactly. You've got just an all-star cast: Stellan Skarsgård, Sean Bean, Jonathan
Yeah.
Pryce, um, Mechalon. She does a great job here. I know her from The Truman Show, and she's also great in Solaris with George Clooney.
Yeah, I haven't
Um,
seen that one yet.
yeah, she's a great actress. And so yeah, it's a heist, but you never actually find out. I don't think wait they're heisting in the briefcase. There's a
Right.
briefcase. We need to get that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's cool because the way the movie throws you in, you're very much in the shoes of the characters. They don't really know what they're going there to do either. And so the audience gets very little information.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not one of those that's over explaining things, but things are just
Right.
happening. You kind of have to just go with it. So I have fun with movies like that, trying to kind of figure out, okay, what's exactly going on, who's who,
Oh yeah. I'd rather have them
allegiances.
under explain it than over explain it.
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of this movie. John Frankenheimer directed it at age 68. And he's putting all of his younger directing compatriots to shame with the action here. It's just
Yeah.
breathless action. I mean,
Yeah.
like you mentioned, the car chases, the shootouts. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing to watch unfold. It's some of the best shot action, I think, in any movie ever made. I mean, really, the action sequences are absolutely stunning. So, huge fan of that. Huge fan of all the twists and turns we go through, the way the cast plays off of each other, pulse pounding action, stunts, great visual storytelling. There are large sequences without any dialogue at all. So yeah, really good. Just a great movie. I mean, I had to give it 5 stars on this most recent rewatch because I was just
Wow.
blown away by how great it was.
Yeah.
And that'll be another one I'll be adding to my collection very soon because I
I think
don't
it's on
currently own.
4K.
It is. I just looked it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did just put
Hmm.
out a 4K version, so I'll
Got an
definitely
eye
be
in it
checking
too.
them. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Nice.
All right. Well, we're come to our number ones, Bert. What do you have as your favorite heist film of all time?
Die Hard.
Oh, cool. Okay. See, this is funny. I was going to put this in honorable mentions. So yeah, I'm glad you included it because the only reason I think I ultimately veered away from it is because the main characters aren't doing the heist, it's the villains.
Hmm.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm totally on board with just this selection. It's a great place. And another one I considered was Die Hard with a Vengeance because that's another
Mm,
heist movie,
gotcha.
which I think is not as good as the first one, but probably
Yeah.
my favorite of the sequels that they did.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So, yeah, anyways, go ahead.
I sneaked into this film when I was 15 years old at the theater,
Oh, nice.
and the I think this a film that the tagline was "It'll blow you out of the back wall of the theater" or something like that,
I think
and
there
that's
was, yeah.
kind of how I felt. I was really blown away. I'd
Yeah.
never seen a movie like this
Right,
when I
right.
saw Die Hard. I remember it so vividly. It's one of those
Mm,
great theater experiences.
that's cool.
And this concept of Bruce Willis had been doing the Moonlighting TV show. He wasn't an action guy,
Yeah,
so
right.
they put him in this role, and so yeah, he largely done comedy,
Yeah.
and it's just such a great setup. This guy that the bad guys don't know he's there working behind the scenes and working against them, and then throws it in their face and all this stuff. It's just bananas, and frankly, it's one of my favorite films of all time. One of the best villains of all time.
Yes.
It really doesn't get any better than this. I feel like villain wise,
Yep.
and just again, yeah, just a very scary guy. Like, and I didn't know the
Yeah.
actor either. So the first time I
Right.
saw this, I mean, I was, he starts counting to three, and there won't be a four.
Right.
I'm like getting scared watching this
Yeah.
thing.
Right.
Hans Gruber, just a great villain.
Yes.
And I love the setting. Being in this building. I mean, they're locked in here. They can't really
Hmm.
get out
Yep.
and that kind of thing. So many memorable lines that just invaded pop culture from
Yes.
this. Some solid action,
Hmm.
intense action, great ending. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, like I said, it's one of my favorite films of all time. So I had to put that at number one.
Excellent selection. Yeah, it's one that we watch every year for Christmas. It is a Christmas movie in my book. I know a lot of that's the big debate. Is it a Christmas movie? There's so many Christmas songs, Christmas references.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
about a guy reuniting with his wife. It's very Christmassy to me.
yeah. It's just
So
not. It's just not like one of those fun light Christmas movies. But
true,
yeah,
true.
yeah,
It's the R-rated action Christmas movie. It's R-rated Home Alone, basically.
yeah, yeah. That's a good comparison.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of similar. One location, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Alan Rickman, like you mentioned, the late Alan Rickman, sorely missed because such a phenomenal actor, delivered one of the best on-screen villains ever. Bruce Willis, I can't imagine anyone else playing that role. It's just
Yeah,
he put
yeah,
so much of himself into it, I feel like, and his comedy chops are apparent, all the one-liners and talking to himself in the ventilation
exactly.
shaft, all the it's so good, so good. So yeah,
Yeah.
excellent selection. Really glad you included that one. All right, on to my number one. It is a film from 1955. I'll be surprised if you've heard of this. It's a French film called Rififi.
Hmm.
Um,
Nope.
Jules Dassin directed this, who's known for American classic noir films like Brute Force and The Naked City. He ended up getting blacklisted by Hollywood, had to move over to Europe,
Oh
and he
well.
made this movie in France, as well as several other great French films. But this is, that classic kind of setup of, the guy who wants to get out and he's drawn into one last big heist and he's got to
Yeah.
assemble his crew and they've got to pull it off and it's all black and white. Just a great kind of classic looking film, very stylish, very well shot. It includes a theme song that explains the title in the middle of the movie. They go to a club and someone starts singing the song, so it's kind of cool.
Oh,
It's kind of got one of
okay.
those kind of interesting feels to it. Very European, but it's great. It's really well made. The heist sequence itself is about half an hour long and no dialogue, no music
Hmm.
throughout the entire sequence, and it just adds so much tension. It's just all sound effects because the whole thing with this heist is they've installed this new thing that's sensitive to sound, and so if you make a sound higher than certain decimals, it's gonna go off, and so they have to be very quiet while they're doing the heist. So it just again
Hmm.
adds a lot to the tension because they're building it up throughout. They're like, okay, we got to test it, and so they buy one of the alarms and they're like testing it on stuff, and like, okay, that's too high, that's too much noise. So the whole movie you're kind of waiting for the big heist and you're like, oh, don't make any noise. It's just the tension that's built throughout is so good. Very clever, very very well thought out, well produced film. Definitely worth watching. Again, the Criterion Collection edition looks and sounds great. So that's my number one. It's a five-star movie for me. It's one I've watched several times, and it's always just as good as the last time I watched it.
Nice.
Yeah.
That yeah. At least a couple films have borrowed that concept of you got to be quiet when you're
Yes.
leaving. I think of Sneakers, which is one I could have mentioned in my honorable mentions.
Oh,
That's a
yeah.
really good one, that Robert Redford film, and also that scene in Mission Impossible. You know,
Yes, absolutely. Yes, Impossible definitely did a good job with that as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, good
No,
stuff.
no
All right.
talking and no sweat.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Yeah, that one was even more intense because you can't even sweat in that one. Yeah, so that's it, folks. That is it for our top 5 heist movies of all time. If we failed to mention one, make sure you leave it in the comments below. Give us your top 5 heist movies ever made. We'd love to have a conversation with you. Bert, it was great as always. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I better get out of here now. So,
Yeah, the cops are going to be on your tail any minute. Get in the car and get out of there. Thank you again, all of you, for joining us. Make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos. And we'll see you next time right here on The Real World.